People don't know what it is to be champions. Oklahoma invented it.
Intercepted. Marshall picks it off. The big linebacker. Still goes. Touchdown. Lehman showing blitz. There's the blitz. Touchdown, Lehman. Touchdown, Oklahoma. 10 of the 23. Mayfield winds up down the field. Hollywood!
40, 45, 50, 45, 40, 35, 30, 25, down the sideline to the 10-5. Touchdown, Oklahoma!
This is the Under the Visor podcast. From the OU Insider Studios, here's your host, Brandon Drum.
Welcome to another OU Insider Under the Visor podcast. My name is Brandon Drum. I'm here with Parker Thune and Colin Kennedy. We have a lot to talk about. Obviously, it's been 2 weeks since we've been there, but you guys are going to have to excuse us because we've been not at home. I mean, literally out and about. Parker and I were in New Orleans. I've been in Dallas. Colin's been in Houston. I'm headed to Florida. It is just a wild time for OU Insider. And we're going to break all that down, what we saw in person, the Under Armour camp, the stuff that Colin did down in Houston. He put on a fantastic offensive line and defensive line camp. Parker and I went down to a 7-on-7 battle camp in New Orleans. And then I was down in Dallas this past weekend, along with seeing five-star Amari Abor, but I was there for the Pylon 7-on-7 in Prosper, Texas. Lots to talk about, lots of things that we've learned on the recruiting trail. Obviously, we're going to talk about basketball. Oklahoma lost yesterday to Gonzaga, but if we don't give it up to Austin Reeves, we are doing this podcast a horrible injustice. That dude can play some ball. And then we're going to finish out with the stuff you guys really want to hear about probably more than anything else, and that is spring football. Football is back in Norman, and hey, things are kind of getting to normal. They're going to let people into the stands for the spring game, and you have Oklahoma State letting people, impressive press people, do in-face interviews. Things are starting to roll back. COVID be damned. We are going to get back to normal at some point in time, and hopefully that is soon. But guys, how are you guys doing?
Oh, I think we should probably, I'll defer to Colin on that, because Colin, I would love to hear about how the 7-on-7, or not the 7-on-7, but the offensive line, defensive line camp in Houston went. There was a whole lot of buzz on social media about all that.
Oh man, it was quite the experience. It was a lot of fun. Camp organization and the player personnel world has always been kind of fascinating for me. And so assembling that was a good time, especially finding guys who have been a little bit under the radar in the Houston area. And then as of yesterday, my phone exploded with coaches across the country very interested in what was put together. So it was overall a really good success. I'm excited to dive into it, man. But there were a couple of OU targets in attendance. There were a couple of guys who could be on the OU board moving forward. So it was overall really, really good. And I think we're now planning on doing another one here pretty soon in Dallas because of the early feedback we received. So it was a great time, man. It's been a busy time for all of us, but I think in the end it was just another great event to be a part of.
That could really be something that you do. And I don't even know if that could be a side gig. I honestly think 247 could be a side gig for you at some point in time, to be honest with you, if you start doing this whole camp thing and get really big at it, because eventually if it becomes popular enough, those type of things kind of hit, even that's across the nation. So that'll be quite interesting to hear. I'm interested to hear who you thought was let's just do that. Actually, let's hear who you have as the stars of the camp. And I don't want to say just stars, but let's keep it OU centric a little bit, just because this is an OU podcast. But what are some guys that you think OU should go after? Number one, guys that they are going after number 2, who are the best or who stood out to you? And can you kind of break down the recruiting process right now from things that you heard while talking to those guys down in Houston?
Yeah, for sure. So first off, to kind of lead with the OU guys that were there, I'll go with 2023 defensive lineman David Hicks Jr., nicknamed DJ. He is a monster. I'm talking about a freaking ox down there in the trenches. And
he was an ox.
He's been hearing from what's that?
Camp. Yeah, he was an ox at the UA camp too.
Oh, absolutely. And he comes up. He's about 6'3", 6'4", a good 250 full of muscle, and basically just bullying everybody up front. And for him to be a 2023 guy, really impressive. Still kind of learn how to use his hands and things like that. But at the same time, he's just going to continue to get better and better. And right now there's a real argument to be made for him being number 1 or number 2 in the state for the 2023 class. Basically, I put up an update yesterday, but he's been hearing a lot from Calvin Thibodeau. They've been in frequent communication on Zoom and things like that. And he said he'd likely get out to Oklahoma at some point this summer. But it is what it is, man. He was a really good player at that camp. And then going over to some other side of things when it comes to Oklahoma, another OU offer in attendance was Martrell Harris, an outside linebacker out of the Woodlands, who he's a really interesting story. And he comes from a very intriguing background. He's really battled to get to this point. And then this past season, when he was really going to explode, he suffered a major collarbone injury that sidelined him basically for the entire year, which kind of hindered his recruitment and basically put this guy on the sidelines for a hot while. And it was really unfortunate, but it is what it is, man. He showed up to the camp and absolutely dominated. He was very impressive whenever he came. And he's a fast, speedy guy. He can move his legs well, move his arms well. And I really liked what I saw from him. And Martrell is another guy who's been in frequent contact with the Oklahoma staff. In fact, Brian Odom has kind of started to pick up contact with him recently. And so it was really interesting to see him get out there because he's kind of a quieter guy. He doesn't do much on social media, but man, when he showed up, he showed out. So it was really great to see Martrell in attendance. Finally, just a couple of guys to monitor moving forward. I would say number 1 is Ashton Porter, a defensive lineman in the Houston area. This guy goes to Cy Ranch High School and can play literally all over the defensive front and plays it at a high level. He's about 6'4", 245 pounds, fast, great hips, bends well. Just really impressive player, man. And he's a great kid too. I firmly believe he could probably play anywhere in the country. I've received a lot of feedback on him recently from various staffs. And so I think Porter is someone who's going to explode. And I wouldn't be surprised if Oklahoma was a team that threw its hat in the ring for his recruitment. Again, he's a 2023 guy, so he has a little bit of time to play out, but man, he has looked really good. And I like his positional versatility and mindset in his corner. And then on the offensive line and things like Van Wells, he's a center. He might be the number 2 center in Texas behind Demetrius Hunter. He was the camp MVP. He was dominant, really good player. Oklahoma probably not going to get involved there, but there were a couple of linemen like Calvin Harvey, who's 6'8" and 328 pounds that Oklahoma has kind of been monitoring among several other schools. Caden Siriaki was the other 6'8", 326-pound tackle who really good player, but has yet to really ever be in camps. That was his first camp setting ever outside of the Under Armour camp. And so a lot of young guys who are still kind of getting their feet wet when it comes to these types of events that Oklahoma's kind of been monitoring. And so it was good to see some of the bigger names out there that Oklahoma's definitely in on, and good to see some guys who've been monitored by Power 5 schools really start to get into these types of things. And so overall, man, it was a fun day.
That's awesome, man. The one thing about David Hicks that really stands out is have you seen his shoes?
Oh, yeah.
He wears a size 15 wide, he said. I just couldn't. It's like, it is for nobody. Like, he's what, 6'3", 6'4". So when you get a 6'3", 6'4" human being and you look down at those shoes and those cleats and they look like Shaq's feet, you're just it's kind of in awe. I walked up to him one day. I go, "Hey, bro, what was that shoe do you wear?" And he goes, 15 wide, man. I have to special order my shoes. I said, that sucks. You know,
it's brutal, man.
He's going to be tall, and he's going to be, I think he's going to grow another couple of inches, which I think, he kind of fits that, helps him fit the mold as a an excellent defensive end, honestly, if he can stretch out his width a little bit, because he does look like he's going to grow a couple more inches. He is already built like a dude, though. I mean, the guy he's yoked out pretty well. So, and he's a coach's kid too, right? He's a coach's kid, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. His father played at Grambling State, was a standout there. I believe had about a year or two in the NFL. And so he's been around the game for a long time, and you're absolutely right. He's got a chance to sprout a little bit. And he brought up to me that Oklahoma was kind of looking at him as a 3-tech lineman, which I think is really interesting. But I wouldn't be surprised if we're talking about this guy as maybe about a 6'5" defensive lineman who can play tackle or end. And just the way he's built already, man, you have no idea how this guy's going to fill out. So I'm excited about his future, man. He's a really good player, and he's only tapping the potential of what his future surface is.
So if you had to venture on how, okay, of the guys you saw, who is the most likely to end up with the Sooners in 2022 and 2023, guys that you guys worked with that day?
Yeah, I would say in 2022, I would look at Martrell Harris. I found it really interesting. So kind of some of the feedback that I've got is that Mississippi State is probably the team that's been hitting the ground the hardest there in Martrell's recruitment. To be understood, right? But he did say that Oklahoma was in a lot of contact with him, and he did say that Oklahoma has kind of projected him as just a versatile linebacker, and that was something that he's really intrigued by. And so, honestly, with the communication that's being built there by Brian Odom and the defensive staff, I think Martrell Harris, if Oklahoma really hit the gas, like that's a linebacker who could really be in the mix for OU. And then 2023, it's tough to say because there aren't very many offers out there. Another guy who was there is Dylan Spencer. He is now at C.E. King High School after being at Katy Taylor beforehand, and then West Orange Stark. He has a couple of offers like Texas A&M. I don't think Oklahoma's in the mix there just yet, but he's someone that OU could go after as a tall, lanky, well-built edge, defensive end kind of guy. But I'm going to tell you, man, if Oklahoma really hit the gas on a guy like Ashton Porter, I think it would be really interesting. And I think that guy has a really high ceiling. So there are a number of 2023 guys. Again, there was probably one, maybe two guys that Oklahoma has an offer on in the 23 class, specifically in attendance. And obviously DJ Hicks is going to be someone that they target moving forward. But guys like Dylan Spencer or an Ashton Porter, some of those big names in that class. Another interesting one, too, that I'll bring up is Dylan Rogers, the inside linebacker in 2023. He only has one offer right now, but the early feedback I've received is he's going to get a bunch here pretty soon. So he's an inside guy that Oklahoma could go after in that cycle. So a couple of intriguing options when it comes to that class. So
that's great that the Houston area has been kind of hard for you to get into. I mean, like there's sometimes there's the what was it 2019? I think they had a couple guys. Uwegbu. I'm trying to think off the top of my head who all came from the Houston area. There was a couple of dudes I think in 2019, but for the most part, they get one or two every year. It's not look. OU fans need to understand this is not going to be. They're never going to be A&M. They're never going to be Texas. They're never going to be LSU with the Houston group. I mean, that's just facts, right?
Right. But you also have to remember, too, is like come from the Houston area, CeeDee Lamb, Kenneth Murray.
Right.
Huge names. And so when you hit on those guys in the Houston area, as talent-ridden as it is, you're going to get some dudes. And so I just think Oklahoma is starting to expand its footprint in the region. And it's honestly one of the most difficult regions to get into if we're talking about it. Houston just has so many various influences, not just in college football, but just in the world. And so as Oklahoma kind of gains a bigger traction in that area, I think they're really going to start to hit on a couple of guys, and they have in the past. So it's definitely a region that Oklahoma has to continue to target. And again, they're still kind of monitoring the area. And so that's why camps like these, not just for like an OU, but for several programs across the country, are really interesting because you brought it up. There's so many talented players, but there's also just not much going on in Houston. I mean, there's just very few events when you compare it to like a Dallas. So it was great to give these guys opportunities because you could tell when we got there that a lot of them, like a Kavon Wright at Manvel, who has like 8 to 10 offers, he hadn't done any camps the entire offseason. And so it's just another opportunity for guys like to get their faces and names out there in front of an OU. And so I think you'll start to see some more dominoes fall there.
And we say that, and they've already got, pancake committed to him. And, you brought up Manville, and Oklahoma is the leader for Justin Medlock. So the inside linebacker out of the Manville area, which we'll touch on when we get to UA stuff here in just a minute. I don't want to bury the lead there too much here. But let's Parker, you and I, traveled down to New Orleans as well. That was quite the experience. I have to tell you, the French Quarter is a little different. Parker and I learned that the hard way. even during a pandemic, it's wild. I mean, it is wild.
Yeah.
We went to go try to find some food, but we realized that what we could find more than anything else was it was like the tall margarita glasses, right? Like the mixers. Was that was like the daiquiris, right? It was the daiquiris, right?
The daiquiris, yeah. It was like every single. It was all pizza and daiquiris. That's what we were remarking on, was the fact that it seemed like every other establishment on that street was either a pizza parlor or a daiquiri place.
And for those that think that Mardi Gras is the only time beads are a thing, spring break, beads are a thing. We learned that
beads are a thing.
We walked right between, had no idea. We're like walking straight ahead, literally. What were you? We were talking about something, and we're just walking, and the music gets real loud, and all of a sudden these girls just woo, and these beads start flying everywhere. We're like, what in the world just happened? But we actually didn't get to see it, thank God, because we were like, I guess we had walked. They were to our left. I do know that because their backs were to us, so that was good. But then you had dudes flashing their chests for beads up at the women on the balconies, and everybody was drunk. Parker and I were the only ones with masks. It was kind of it was different. It was very different. But I will say, like, if you were there to have fun and party, it looks like a pretty hopping place. I mean, I've been there during a bowl before, but I've never been like during non-bowl activities. Bowl activities are always funny because you get to see the two fans become kids again, the grown adults. But
I feel like everybody becomes a kid again on Bourbon Street to a certain extent.
Yeah. The food was good though. We had some good crocodile.
Food was fantastic.
Yeah. That place. What was the place we went to? What was that place called?
Oh gosh, I can't remember off the top of my head.
Something grill, right?
It was
seafood grill or something like that.
Yeah, it was something very classic New Orleans. I'll have to look back at the pictures I got from the trip. That'll tell me. But no, they. I mean, all the food that we ate down in New Orleans hit the spot. I don't think I'd ever had gumbo before, but had some pretty fantastic gumbo down there.
Yeah. And then, of course, I am, Parker knows this, but I am a diehard NCIS New Orleans guy. So we had to go see like where they were. Poor Parker. I'm like, dude, I've got to go see this stuff.
Brandon was in his bag, going full fanboy mode.
I think I remember the text, and I can already tell he was chomping at the bit to get out there and see.
Yes, I was. I so wanted to go see it, and we were successful in a lot of those cases. We got to see where they recorded and all that stuff, so it was pretty cool.
Good stuff.
So anyways, we went to a 7-on-7 battle. 7-on-7. You know what stood out most to me was the younger crowd, to be honest with you. The younger crowd, and Parker, you can dive into this and just go full-fledged and talk it up as much as you want here. But for me, there was a couple of the SFE group that was really talented that we got to know pretty good. And then there was a group from Texas that was really good. They were younger. I think it was Texas Elite, maybe.
Texas Elite.
Yeah, they were good. They had a couple of guys that were coming up. And then, oh my gosh, what was the other? There was a...
Bootleggers were out there, I assume.
Bootleggers were out there. We can discuss that, but that information's changed a little since we've talked to Jacoby Matthews. But
makes sense.
It's Jacoby, so that totally makes sense. But Parker, you dive into it. Go as much detail as you want to about the what stood out to you. We obviously stopped by and saw Lorenzo DeBose as well. I always call him Lonzo for some reason. Lorenzo DeBose as well. And then we you talked to Jalen Hill pretty extensively as well. So go as much detail as you want into that. And because I think Oklahoma fans are going to really like to hear that, because there's a lot of good Oklahoma talk there.
Yeah, well, Brandon, I think it's real easy to forget, too. On the way down to New Orleans, we stopped in Texarkana and talked to Derek Brown as well.
That's right.
And,
that's right.
Not long after that, I issued a high-confidence crystal ball projecting that he lands with Oklahoma. So we'll see what happens there. But, no, I think my biggest takeaway from New Orleans, at least as it pertains to OU, is, my goodness, Jacoby Matthews just looks like a man among boys. I mean, that is a grown man out there on the football field. That is a dude that could walk out at the safety position at the FBS level right now and dominate. And obviously OU is just one of several teams in the running for him. He was really the only guy there outside of Kamari Rogers that OU has any significant interest in. But you look at Matthews, he's probably the one guy at that camp that Oklahoma has a legitimate shot at landing. I talked to Rogers pretty extensively. As I mentioned on the board at the time, I think it's going to be either Notre Dame or Miami for him, unless one of those in-state schools, Ole Miss or Mississippi State, can make a run. He is a Mississippi kid, but it doesn't look like, to me at least, that Oklahoma is going to make a serious push for Kamari Rogers. I do know for a fact Notre Dame really, really wants him, and they have made him a priority with new defensive coordinator Marcus Freeman up there. But as far as Matthews is concerned, I mean, you talk to him, Brandon, and you just get the sense that his recruitment isn't really anywhere close to wrapping up. There's still a lot to be decided in that race. So although Oklahoma appeared to have good odds at the time, you don't know, obviously, how things shift week to week, month to month. So that'll be an interesting one to follow. I mean, that's a 5-star guy. That's the top prospect in the state of Louisiana. So that would be a big addition for Oklahoma, especially given that in that 2022 class right now, they still only have one defensive commit in Kobe McKenzie. Everybody else is offensive. So it's about time that they start racking up those dudes on the defensive side of the football. And Jacoby Matthews, obviously one of the guys high on that priority list. And you mentioned the younger crowd. There were some 2024 kids I got the chance to chat with, a couple of those SFE wide receivers, JoJo Trader, Jeremiah Smith, 2024 kids with a lot of upside. Both of them already have Power 5 offers. And I would be surprised if a program like Oklahoma wasn't in the mix for one or both of those guys in the next few months here.
Yeah, no, the Lorenzo DeBose is the guy that, when he talked about Mississippi State being a good, one of the major guys for him, major players for him. And I text him after the Under Armour camp as well. And, Oklahoma's still in the running, still pushing hard. He hasn't set up if he doesn't show up for the Champion Barbecue, I'll be shocked. Which is something we probably need to touch on, honestly. They've got the date tentatively set for June 11th through the 13th. And right now there is some pretty big names being tossed around for the Champion Barbecue. We'll touch on that here in just a minute. But yeah, like you said with Jacoby Matthews, the 5 stars. Anytime you're going against a 5-star that is nationally renowned, things changed almost daily. Because at one point, it did seem like Oklahoma was in the top 3 there for him. It was like Texas. What was it? The schools that what were the schools we thought were like in the top 3? Texas, Oklahoma, and
Texas A&M.
Texas A&M is who we thought were the top 3 for him. Or was it Florida State? Was it Florida State?
I believe it was Texas A&M. I could be wrong.
Texas A&M. Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, but the funny thing is LSU. Oh, Florida. It was Florida. Florida was number 1, Texas number 2, and we thought Oklahoma was in the top 3 there for a bit. Obviously, that has changed. The funny thing is like I have it like literally on video where he goes, I tried to commit to Florida, and they told me no because they didn't have the defensive back coach. They didn't have a defense, so they turned him down, which – when that got over to the Florida board, Can you imagine what Blake Halderman had to deal with? He called me. He's like, dude, this was
Meltdown.
it was epic meltdown because he asked me, it was funny because he goes, hey, do you have this on video? And I said, yes. I sent him the video and he's like, oh my God, the Florida fans are going to go berserk because it was just one of those deals. When he said it, my eyes lit up. I was like, oh no. Because Parker, we talked about it, whether I was going to post that because I didn't want a meltdown to happen. So I waited and posted that in the comments, like page 2 of the comments to get it buried. So, and they still found it. And melted down. Poor guy.
Everything on the ether, people are going to dig up, Brandon. If you put it out there, somebody's going to go and find it.
It was crazy, man. They were not very happy, but I still think Florida's in a good spot. I think Florida's in a really good spot for him. I think Texas is in a really good spot for him, and basically because he plays with Bryce Anderson with bootleggers. So that he's in his ear all the time. Obviously, Texas. Bryce Anderson, you got BJ Allen in his ear as well. They're good friends. Things are just looking really good for Texas for Jacoby Matthews to me. And obviously, like you said, we stopped by and saw Derek Brown on the way in. Derek Brown is long. And Colin, we got to see him in action at the Under Armour camp. And his first step might be as quick as you can get, man. I mean, it is fast. So he weighs 215, he says right now. He's about 6'4", 215. Has to put on some weight, but you can tell the frame's there to put on weight. He's not as wide as Clayton was as far as being able to put weight on, but he's going to be a Benito type of guy. He's going to be 230, 240 when all things are said and done. He's not going to be the biggest guy, but he's going to have that first step like Benito, where it's damn near impossible to stop, literally. And so I love Derek Brown. I think the crystal ball picks for him is great. Clayton Smith is in his ear all the time. When he talks to Coach Kane, he says he always talks to Clayton at the same time. So Oklahoma's doing a fantastic job recruiting him, and he's coming up for the Champion Barbecue, and his official visit, he says, is for the Nebraska game on September 18th. So,
hey, the Nebraska game is happening.
It is happening. They tried to, out.
That was a fun little saga for about 6 or 7 hours there. My goodness.
And nobody covered it like Parker, because Parker is from Nebraska and he took that personal. I'm telling you, Parker took that personal. He was like,
yeah, you don't mess with my OU Nebraska matchup, Brandon. I tell you what, I've been looking forward to that for a decade. Like, hell no.
All over it, man. All over it. He posted like 3 different updates, and finally OU came out and was like, it's happening. And then Nebraska, like 5 hours later, put out something like, all right, I guess the backlash was too hard. We have to go get our asses kicked in Norman on September 18th. We can't back out of this one. But I thought they could go. They were going to play anybody, no matter whether it was in Uzbekistan or that was the quote, right? Uzbekistan. He used the actual country of Uzbekistan as where they would go play if they were going to play somebody tough. It didn't matter. Alabama, Clemson, anywhere in Uzbekistan, but not Oklahoma.
That was 7 months ago, Brandon. That was before Frost was squarely on the hot seat.
This is true. He needs a 6.
I mean, I understand where the dude is coming from. Like, you got to do what you can to keep your job.
I'm sorry. You can't bitch out, though. I'm going to say it. I held back. You can't bitch out like that. You can't. You just can't. It's one of those deals where you look pathetic when you do that. And I honestly, tell me if I'm wrong on this, guys. And Parker, you'll know this more than anybody because you're from Nebraska. Is it because of, and we totally digress, by the way, of what we were just talking about, but that's what happens on this podcast sometimes. Is it because they're celebrating the 1971 and the 87 or 86, whatever it was, for the Game of the Century 2, both Game of the Centuries, more so the Game of the Century 1 because it's a 50-year anniversary? Is it because they're celebrating those and the fact that they played in those games and one program is still at that elite status and the other one is not, that Nebraska's like, ooh, this is embarrassing. Like, we were this and now we're this, or we were that and then now we're this, and you can't. Is that why they're trying to back out of it, because they aren't on that level and Oklahoma still is?
I mean, you have to imagine that's the logical conclusion because, I mean, it was reported, and I did some work to corroborate this, that Nebraska was in contact immediately with schools from the MAC and Old Dominion to try and schedule a home date in Lincoln. So they were already in talks to try and schedule a cupcake over that Oklahoma game in Norman. So, yeah, Nebraska was full tilt. They were like, you know what, whatever we can do to not play this game, let's go ahead and do it. And Frost was the one running point on it from everything I heard up there. And, I talked to multiple people real close to the program, and literally everything that I heard from them indicated that first off, local media in Nebraska was shocked by that. They had no idea that was coming because apparently Oklahoma got the word out about it. Like,
they leaked
the word came from Oklahoma, which makes a lot of sense because, I mean, if you're Joe C, right, and who even is the athletic director in Nebraska, Bill Moose. If Bill Moose calls you up and said, hey, can we talk about moving the game? And it's the 50-year anniversary of the game of the century, and you got them coming down to Norman, and you're renewing a rivalry that's been dead for 10 years. What is your first reaction? Hell no. I'm like, hang on. Let me put the phone down and get McMurphy on the other line.
Or how about this? How about, hey, Moose, tell me what this sounds like. Click. And then get McMurphy on the line and leak that. Dude, he went.
The thing is, Brandon,
he went Sopranos on him, dude. He was like, nope, you're not doing that to us.
Well, and the thing about it, Brandon, is that now that's going to be the dominant storyline when this game is played in Norman. That's the only thing we're going to be talking about all week is, this is the game that Nebraska tried not to play.
Oh, and Lincoln and those OU players are going to try to make it living hell for them. That
Sweep
Saturday.
the leg, baby.
Oh yeah, sweep the leg. It is going to be nasty. And you remember? I can remember this. I don't know. You guys are too young. In 1997, I went to the home game between OU and Nebraska. Nebraska gets up 72 or 60 something to whatever. And Damon Parker finally goes off in the fourth quarter, has like 100 and something yards in the fourth quarter against Nebraska's third string. And Oklahoma scores like 21 or 28 points. I don't remember the final score completely. I just know that it was bad. Nebraska ran that up. I mean, ran it up on Oklahoma. And then they did so the very next year in Lincoln, like 69-8 or 3 or some bullcrap, 69-6 or something. I don't know if y'all remember all that. But my point is that this is going to be something along those lines. But Oklahoma is going to be doing that to them. It's going to be what Oklahoma did to Nebraska the final few years outside that Big 12 tournament game in 2010, where they laid 50, 60 points on them. It's going to be the reincarnation of that all over again. And there is nothing Scott Frost and Nebraska can do about it because they poked the bear. They poked the bear. They created this. Oklahoma probably wasn't going to go all out and bury them in week 3 had they not done this. Am I wrong on this?
Well, no, not at all. Especially, I mean, that early in the season, you're still trying to get a feel for who you have at your disposal, how your depth chart is going to shape up, and you're trying to make sure guys don't get injured earlier in the season.
Spencer Rattler's playing in the fourth quarter.
They're going to empty the chamber. And shoot, even like here's the thing about playing a program like Nebraska. Even if Spencer Rattler doesn't play the fourth quarter, they're still going to run up the score because that's how dire the straits are for Nebraska at this point in time. Keep in mind, Nebraska over the course of the Scott Frost era has lost to programs such as Troy and Northern Illinois. They are in no place to even remotely attempt to compete with Oklahoma right now.
No, and here's the funny thing. Like we said, Spencer will be playing for. It doesn't matter. They have somebody Spencer's equal as the other guy, if not who might end up being better than Spencer Rattler when his career is over, and Caleb Williams. Like, I know he hasn't ever played it down or anything, but everything you hear coming out of Norman right now is that is a dude. I mean, a dude, and he is performing very, very well right now behind the scenes, and already has picked up the offense because he spends so much time watching film whenever he gets the chance to do so. I hate to say it, but when they meet up again, I think it's going to be Caleb's junior year would be it in Lincoln. I don't think
it would be his sophomore year. I think it's back-to-back years. They're here in.
I thought they took a year off. Do they not?
I don't believe so. But yeah, if I remember correctly, they're here in 2021 and then in Lincoln in 2022. But no, as far as this year is concerned, I don't care what the line is on September 18th. Give me the over.
I've got it. I'm looking it up right now. Future schedules. Here we go.
So basically, what we're saying at the end of all this is
it is 2022. Oh my! So yeah, Scott Frost. They're going to do the same thing to him in 2020. You're right, Parker. It's 2022. I thought they took I honestly thought that Georgia was 2022. I thought they had Georgia 2022, and then they went at home, and then they went to Nebraska. But yeah, it's back to back. It's Georgia that they take the years off before they play them again. So yeah, man, that's going to be nasty. Guys, we were also at the Under Armour camp. I know I'm going to switch back over to recruiting real quick. We totally sidetracked there. But what was Colin? What was your biggest takeaway from that camp as far as OU targets go? I bet mine's the same one as yours, but go ahead.
Wow. Okay. There are a lot. Let's see here.
Who was the best player there?
Man. I think
OU targets commits.
I think Terrence Brooks stole the day. He was ridiculous.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was really good. I would agree. I'm going to go with Talon Chetron.
Yeah, I think that was going to be your guy, but yeah. I'm going to go to the flip side of this, and Terrence Brooks.
Yeah, go for it. Hey, man, explain. Go for it.
So for those of you who don't know who Terrence Brooks is, I'm going to have an update on him, if not today, tomorrow. Terrence Brooks is a cornerback at John Paul II High School in Plano, and he is ridiculous. Now, when he came into the camp, he probably wasn't as well known as he should be, but he did not lose a single rep from what I remember. And he went up against some of the biggest names at that camp and basically shut them down. Like, it looked easy at times. And he's built well. He's tall. He's lanky. He already looks like a Division I caliber cornerback. And then he goes up against some stars at the receiver position and shuts them down completely with everyone watching. So he was one of Steve Wiltfong's favorites. Fong and I were standing there like, good Lord, look at Terrence Brooks just going to town. And he did it for good reason, man. And I think Oklahoma's been after him pretty hard. Mm-hmm. Obviously, I'll have that conversation here pretty soon. But Terrence Brooks was maybe my favorite player to watch on the day.
Yeah, I thought he was good. I thought Taviano was really good, 2023 DB. Yeah, Javen Taviano. I thought he was really good from the defensive back perspective. Trying to think. I thought Parker's boy Jared Kerr was really good. Trying to think who else I thought was really offensively. I just thought Talon Chetron was, oh my God. So I'm talking to trying to think. Dang, his last name starts with a D, and I just went blank now. This is what happens when you have so many targets. Defensive back, 2023, plays on Texas Flex.
Last name is D.
Yeah.
Daniel Demery.
Daniel Demery. He's listed as a wide receiver on our side. That's why I always get him so confused sometimes. He doesn't have an OU offer yet. But I think he's going to be like an in-the-box guy, like a nickel guy. His trunk is just huge. Going to add quite a bit of weight. I'm sure you agree with that. But I was talking to him, and I asked him who the best player he went up against. He goes, Talon Chetron. It's just totally, because and then he talked about it. He's like, man, he had me on skates, bro, when he ran that route, like just admitted it. So it was just one of those deals where Talon and I don't know who the other guy he abused was, but he went up in the corner of the end zone on one of the passes he caught, And you saw that on video, right? Where he just contorted his body. Oh my God. It looked like he hung up there for like 10 seconds to go grab the ball. And he's just something else. We were talking about Steve Wiltfong. He and I kind of looked over at you and was like, wow, just like, I mean, what are you going to do? Like that guy, he's not going to test. He's like kind of like CD at a young age where he's not going to test well because he doesn't know how to do it. But when he gets out there, he's fast. I mean, you can see it. He may go run a 4.7, but he's probably really a 4.5 guy because he doesn't know how to test. He doesn't know how to, get out of the blocks on a 40 and stuff like that. Those are important things to know when you're running a 40, those type of stuff. And he doesn't understand any of that. He doesn't understand how to do the shuttles and stuff like that. That's just not who he is. But you get him on a football field and he's faster than everybody else. And I think that's kind of the key. He plays fast. That's
the first thing I thought when I watched him in person for the very first time, Brand. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm looking at baby CD Lamb here.
Yeah.
Because he's not the type of guy that's going to put up insane testing numbers, but you can just tell by the way that he commands himself on the football field and all the physical tools that he displays on any given snap. You just know, okay, that's a dude that's going to be really, really successful, not just at the collegiate level, but at the professional level. I've said before, I think Talon Shetron is one of the top 5 wide receivers in this 2022 class. I would venture to say top 3.
I would agree after what I witnessed the other day, because there was some really good wide receivers there, and he kind of shined over everybody else. And I think that was kind of, Colin, that was kind of the consensus. We were talking about that. It was you, me, and Mike Roach when we were walking away, and I asked you guys, where do y'all think that guy's ranked? And we all kind of were like, he's 50 between, what we all say. We all agreed like he was 30, between 30 and 100, 30 and 75, like as far as rankings go. Yeah, I mean, but you're splitting hairs at that point, right? I mean, once you get in the top 100, everybody's kind of splitting hairs. It's just a number. That's what people don't understand. Like, these are just numbers at this point until you get to the 5-star guys. And I think Talon has a chance to be a 5-star when it's all said and done. He needs a fantastic senior year, but he has that ability. He has that ability, and he has something that we cherish on 247, and he's a really good basketball player. And if you're really good at 2 sports, we kind of cherish that. We use that as a reason to pump you up a little higher because you show that your athleticism is able to go between multiple sports. You're not just a solely focused one person, just a football player. Your athleticism is just across the board. And like you were saying, Parker, the guy is a hard worker. That's the other thing about him. He's a hard worker. I saw it all last summer. He trains with my son, my oldest, up there at Daryl Knight's Oklahoma Sports Performance in Edmond. And he's in there every day at 8:30 in the morning, just busting his hump. And you want to know the funny thing is his brother is very talented as well. And you're starting to see that as the offers are starting to roll in for Tabre. So I think that's just huge for him and his brother. The first thing that crossed my mind was, I mean, does he go to K-State to follow his brother if that's where his brother goes? I don't think he does. I'm just saying. No, I don't think so either. But I'm just saying, it was just, that's going to cross your mind. They're twins. So, I mean, it's just one of those deals. The other guy that stood out to me, Oklahoma-wise and Preps-wise, was Luke Hasz. I thought Luke Hasz, he's going to be the top tight end in the 2023 class. I don't even think that's debatable at this point. Do you, Colin, Parker?
I don't think so because I just don't know who else you would put there. I mean, number one, the guy is 6'4" and projects to be well over 220 pounds. And
yeah.
I believe
he's 205.
Exactly. Like, I believe the other contender is Jaden Greathouse out of Austin Westlake. And I've seen both of them, and I would take Luke, if not 10 times out of 10, 9. I mean, he just projects as a future star at the tight end position. He has every tool that you want at that position specifically. And I think he's also just a great kid. He's willing to do whatever it takes. And there was one point too, I think my favorite memory of him at that camp, I believe you'll remember this too. he's running down the sideline on basically just a go route, and he gets basically shoved right into the railing on the
he
sideline.
lands at you and I's feet. Literally.
Oh, it was bad.
Yeah, right in the
Like,
railing.
he got basically tossed into some rails, and everyone at the camp just stops and is like, this could be pretty bad. And he basically shot right up, gave himself a couple of shake-offs, and then was back in line. It's like, this dude's different. This dude is different.
Well, and consider this. Legitimately, is there a hotter commodity right now in the recruiting world than Luke has? My
Maybe
gosh,
Chris
it's like
McClellan.
every single day he's picking up a new high-end Power 5 offer. Everybody across the country wants this guy, and with good reason. You see what he's able to do, not just on tape, but in the camps that we've attended, Brandon and Colin. And it's like every time I look at my phone, there's a Twitter notification from you or Luke or his dad saying, oh, look at that, another offer for Luke has.
Yeah. I mean, the other guy, ironically, that could rival him as far as being one of the hottest players in the country is another guy that was at the Under Armour camp and just completely blew everybody away as far as what he was able to do on the defensive line. And that was Owasso defensive lineman Chris McClellan. Oh my gosh, he is going to be a superstar. And look, lo and behold, Oklahoma offered him now. So I've been trying to pump that for the last 2 years, and finally it came around. I mean, I talked to his dad for a good hour prior. I think you were over there with Mike Roach, Colin, and I was over there talking to Chris McClellan's dad for a good hour. And before we were able to start doing things, before it started raining on us.
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, that I'm trying to think of the word. So he's really close with Garrick McGee, who is one of the offensive analysts for Florida, and has done some really good work on McClellan, getting McClellan down there to set up official visit to Florida on June 4th. And now, when I talked to Gentry Williams, Gentry is going to go, him and Chris are going to visit the same places. So they're going June 4th to Florida. They got June 18th to USC. Both of them are going together. They're both from the Tulsa area. They grew up together. They're friends. They're just really, really trying to go through this process as much as they can together. So Oklahoma offering Chris McClellan was huge in that aspect because Gentry is going to be at the Champion Barbecue on June 11th. And, there was buzz that it was going to change potentially because Texas and Texas A&M were doing it, and that Future 50 camp was going on at the same time. The good news is it doesn't sound like it. Sounds like there's going to be 2 Champion barbecues. They're going to continue with the one that they do the final weekend in July every year, but they're also going to hold that one on June 11th. And it sounds like that's when Gentry put it to me like this. This is what he said. He goes, dude, I'm going to go down there. It's going to be like I'm taking 2 officials to Oklahoma. And this is how he has it planned out right now, because he's tentatively scheduled to go to Nebraska for his official visit on September 18th. That's what they're talking to him about. He hasn't scheduled it, but that's where he's going. It's where he thinks he's going to end up in Norman for his official visit. But he's going to go down and stay in Norman for 3 days and hang out. And it sounds like him and Chris McClellan might come down together and spend 3 days in Norman, hang out during the Champion Barbecue weekend with all the other visitors and commits that are there. So this could be huge for Oklahoma. Huge. Because Chris McClellan's dad basically told me if they didn't offer by the end of April, beginning of May, Oklahoma wasn't even going to get a chance because they're trying to get this thing over with by October. That's when Chris McClellan wants the defensive lineman out of Owasso. That's when he wants it done. And they're going to have a problem because Florida's built themselves up a pretty good lead. USC's done a fantastic job, and USC's done a really good job with Gentry. I mean, I can't tell you, every time I talk to Gentry, it's USC. Now, granted, he'll admit, he'll be like, look, OU's my leader, but USC, man, it's hard for him to pass that up because he has such a strong relationship with Dante Williams, their defensive back coach. So this Champion Barbecue, if Oklahoma can get those two down, that's huge because I think that can solve a lot of problems. They're going to be able to get these guys down in person, be able to spend time with them in person. And you know how Oklahoma and Riley is when they get them in person. 8 times out of 10, they end up committing to Oklahoma. So doesn't matter who you are. It's just how it is. That's going to be big for Oklahoma. They've got to get those. I think those two are the most important recruits in a long time for Oklahoma as far as state goes. Now, don't I want to preface this by saying I'm not saying that Talon Chetron isn't big or Jacob Sexton's not big because they are. They're huge. Right. It's just I think that or Jaden Rowe, I think those 5 obviously are massive, but I just think to stem the tide in how things have gone in Tulsa for Oklahoma in the past couple of years, especially on the defensive backside, you've got to land Gentry Williams. You cannot have another Josh Proctor incident where a legacy gets out.
Right. And I think the other part of this too is not only the fact that, okay, they're both defensive players who are high profile guys within your state borders who everyone across the country wants. But I mean, I'm also really fascinated by the other aspect of this is.
Hey, hold on. Breaking news here.
Here we go.
Ironically, I just get a text from and I didn't send the text out. They text me. A parent of an OU commit just texted and said, I assume you know the barbecue is on June 19th. And I said, it got moved. So they were talking about moving it. They decided not to. Now it sounds like they may have.
Speaking of which, is the other part of this I was going to bring up is like that there's everything going on down that same exact weekend. I mean,
but why screw up your chances with 2 of the top end state guys?